Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 24th of January, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today, we have some ETH spot ETF related news. So you can see here there is a video, or there was an interview going around between the SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce and one of these, I think, crypto news outlets. Now, Hester said on this interview, and I quote, "We shouldn't need a court to tell us that our approach is arbitrary and capricious in order for us to get it right. So I certainly hope that wouldn't be the case with regards to Ethereum ETF." So basically what she's saying is that she really hopes that the SEC can basically approve these things without having to go through the courts to do so, because obviously the courts forced the SEC's hand when it came to the spot BTC ETFs because of the grayscale win back last year, and Hester's basically saying that she believes that the SEC shouldn't have to be dragged through the courts again in order to approve these spot ETFs. Now that's a really positive signal, but at the same time, not to put a damper on things here, but at the same time, this is just very on brand for Hester. She has been an ally for crypto for a very long time now. She is obviously the complete opposite of Gary Gensler if you've been following Hester at all, and obviously you guys know what Gary Gensler is like. So for her to be saying this, I'm not surprised at all, and it is totally expected and totally in line with how she views this industry and how she's been a champion of crypto within the SEC, but it obviously really depends on Gary Gensler. He was the tiebreaker for the, vote on the spot BTC ETFs. Obviously it was a 3-2 yes and no vote there. So really it depends on him when it comes to ETH. Now, I have mentioned plenty of times on the Refuel that, Gary Gensler used to call ETH a security, but then he changed his tune. I think it was at least 6 months ago now, where he stopped directly calling ETH a security and just started saying that most crypto assets are securities. And obviously the SEC is still fighting that point in court with Coinbase and Binance and even Kraken, but when it comes to ETH specifically, I think that ETH, is pretty safe at this point. And I always thought that ETH was safe from the SEC, but I think that the fact that Gensler hasn't even said anything about ETH being a security, and also ETH wasn't listed as one of the assets that the SEC considers to be a security in their lawsuits against Coinbase and Binance and Kraken, I feel like the chances of it ever getting labeled a security are basically zero at this point. And because of that, I feel like the chances of a spot ETH ETF getting approved are quite high. I know that the ETF guys, both James and Eric, who I've mentioned a bunch of times on the Reefer before, have said that they give the odds at around 70% that the ETFs are approved by May, which is the first final deadline, or the first batch of final deadlines. I think there's 2 that are due in May. So 70% is quite high odds. I mean, it's kind of funny because people said that there was people still think that there's a 0% chance. I mean, people thought there was a 0% chance of the BTC spot ETF going live, but those were obviously live there. So I think that definitely the ETH spot ETFs are getting approved. I'm not going to say I have like 90+% odds on May, because they may delay it and then just approve it later in the year. But as we've seen, when they deny these things, or I should say deny these things, they tend to get sued. So maybe they're going to approve that to avoid another lawsuit, because they have a really bad track record in the courts right now, and they probably don't want to add to that track record. Now, the final thing I'll say on this is that I know there's been a lot of talk recently about whether the BTC ETF stuff was bullish or bearish for BTC, whether it's going to be bullish or bearish going forward. I want to reiterate the point that the move on BTC and on other assets, obviously within crypto, based on the ETF hype, happened from 25k to 50k. That was the move. I know I've been saying 25k to 45k, but technically it went to almost 50k, I think 49k. So, but the bulk of the move is definitely 25k to 45k. And also ETH moved during that as well. ETH did lag, of course, didn't move nearly as much. I think it went from 1500 to 2.3k or something like that. So obviously didn't move nearly as much percentage-wise. But if you actually look at from bottom to the price right now, both BTC and ETH are up about the same amount. So people are speculating on, okay, well, is ETH going to actually go up against BTC and go up against USD, of course, leading up to these ETFs? And then is it going to be the same thing where it has a sell-off, and then, there's going to be outflows out of ETH, which is the grayscale product, because obviously we've seen a lot of outflows out of GBTC. It's all speculation, but my personal view on things is that the ETFs are a huge net positive for crypto over the long term. Over the short term, at the end of the day, people are going to speculate around these things. They're going to price it in, especially when it's something so obvious. Like for the market thought the chance of the BTC spot ETFs getting approved was basically 100%. It was one of the most obvious trades you could take, and obviously, people rotated out of Bitcoin into other assets within crypto because they were making money on BTC, and they're like, okay, well, I want to go speculate on other things, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all speculation. But as I've always said, I think since pretty much the day that BlackRock filed for an ETF, a BTC spot ETF, and it became a new narrative within crypto, I think I've said from even back then that the real, I guess, value of ETFs is that they're a passive flow vehicle, and they add up over time, and it's over the long term, and they're kind of indifferent to the price, I think, in terms of when they buy. So it acts as a nice cushioning effect for the overall asset. For the asset itself. So for BTC, and then hopefully in the future for ETH as well. But anyway, enough on the ETF stuff there. There's a bunch of stuff to get through with regards to core dev updates and a pretty big update on client diversity. I know I've spoken about client diversity a lot over the last 2 episodes, but there was a lot more that happened today, and it's really an exciting time for client diversity, honestly. I know we've been talking about it for years within the Daily Gwei community and obviously within the Ethereum community at large, but there's a lot of exciting stuff happening there. But first off, I just want to start off by saying that EIP 7251, that max effective balance increase EIP, seems pretty certain to be included in the Petra upgrade, hopefully by the end of this year. And today, Mike Nutter, one of the champions, or basically the champion for this EIP, shared on Twitter today, supporting in-protocol validator consolidation is a must-have feature in EIP 7251. Both Francesco and Mikhail and Mike wrote up a doc to answer some common questions and explain how it all fits together. So if you want to learn more about EIP 7251, and you want to learn what all the implications are, how it all works under the hood, this is a really, really great explainer. I mean, there are some complex kind of equations in here. Basically the second half of the document. You don't really have to read that. I think that the top half is really where the bulk of the information is. I would say that just basically all of this is where the bulk of the information is. But yeah, if you're interested in that, you can go check that out. But as you guys know, EIP 7251 is my favorite EIP. That's part of the Petra upgrade. It is something that I'm most excited about, and I can't wait to consolidate my own validators, and I can't wait to see what the consolidation looks like across the bigger players, because as I've said before, the biggest benefit here is that once you consolidate, we can start increasing the load on the network, and that includes increasing the amount of blobs on the network for rollups, and also potentially increasing the gas limit. And also increasing the gas limit into vertical trees as well, which hopefully will go live next year. So there could be, over the next 18 or so months, massive scalability increases at layer 1, which will flow to layer 2. And a big part of it is validator consolidation, because of the fact that we're taking load off the network. And then I shouldn't say we're taking load off the network. We're basically trading load, where essentially we're taking the load off the network for the validators, for the number of validators that we have on the network, and then replacing it with something that we get something out of. Because right now, the fact that we have so many validators is actually just technical debt. We don't need it. It was part of the old sharding roadmap. We don't need that anymore, and it's actually putting unnecessary strain on the network. But by eliminating that and by consolidating validators with 7251, what we basically get to do is now we get to have, as I said, we get to trade that for more blobs, which increase the scalability of rollups, which lower the fees for rollups, and for anyone posting data obviously on Ethereum L1, and then also with coupled with vertical trees, be able to increase the gas limit. And I'm not talking about just a 2x increase here, guys. I'm talking about potentially like a 10x plus increase. I've seen some people say it could be up to a 100x increase, because with vertical trees, you get state expiry as well, hopefully, maybe, soon after that, which basically means that the load on the network remains relatively the same as it is today, maybe even less, even though we've increased the gas limit, which obviously increases the overall scalability, not just for layer 2s, but for basically every user of the Ethereum L1 network, without causing stress on full nodes, stress on validators, and compromising on the decentralization of the Ethereum network. So really, really great stuff happening there. But you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And then also there was a tweet thread from Lodestar talking all about their view on the next upgrade after Denkum, obviously, which is Petra. And I remember I shared a similar thread from the Reth team, or from Paradigm, who builds Reth, the other day. And this is basically the core dev teams putting out their own thoughts into blog posts, into tweet threads about the EIPs that are going to be included with Petra, and which EIPs they think should be prioritized, and which ones they think are going to be the most benefit, and so on and so forth. And I'm really glad to see this, because the fact is that the core devs are the ones that build the things. They're not and they're also the ones that obviously and the core researchers, they kind of research, they spec things out. But the core devs, at the end of the day, they're the ones building this stuff. And there's a lot of teams building. There's like 10 independent teams at this stage across the execution layer and consensus layer that are building all of this stuff. So really, they have an outsized influence here and an outsized say, because even if an EIP gets accepted overwhelmingly by the community and the community really wants it, at the end of the day, the core devs still have to program this and still have to code this into the clients. So if they think it's going to take way too long, which means that we'll probably see like a large delay in an upgrade because of that EIP may get shelved and then keep getting worked on in the background, but the other ones will take priority. And, you know, EIP 1559 is a perfect example of this. That was a huge EIP, guys. Like, there was a massive undertaking because it completely changed the Ethereum layer 1 fee market, but it had overwhelmingly majority support. I mean, I'm pretty sure like 99% of the Ethereum community supported it, but it took 2.5 years from when the EIP was proposed to when it actually went into the network, even though it was incredibly, beneficial to the network and it had a lot of support. It just, because it took a while to do all the research on it, do all the audits on it, get it into the clients. So the more complex an EIP is, the longer it's going to take, just naturally. And that's exactly what happens. And that's exactly what's going to happen going forward as part of the Ethereum roadmap. This is never going to be something that goes away. It's just the nature of building software. But anyway, you can go read Lodestar's thread for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I'm going to spend probably 10 minutes or so talking about client diversity again today. So Honey Abu has updated their clientdiversity.org execution client diversity data to reflect that Lido has actually reduce the amount of Geth that they're using across their kind of suite of node operators here. So you can see here that Geth was at 84% before, and now it's at 78.7%. Still not below that critical 66% threshold, but obviously we want, we have to start somewhere. Now, we remember that this data is not based on network scraping. It is based on data collected by Honey Abu themselves by basically going out there and asking what big providers are running. If they're running Geth, if they're running another client, and also using publicly available information like the Lido thread here, which I've actually got here, and you can go check this out for yourself. This Lido thread that basically says, what percentage of the network is using what execution layer client. So that, you can see Geth, Nethermind, Besu, and Aragon in there. So this is great to see. Obviously, we want to see the number to keep continuing to come down, but it's already down there. It's already come down 5% at least, just based on Lido. As I said to you guys, the only two players that we have to get to move across is Lido and Coinbase. And right now, if Coinbase switched across from 100% Geth to 100% Nethermind, for example, they're probably not going to switch over 100%. They're probably going to do like a hybrid approach. But let's say they did, we would instantly solve this issue. That's how relatively easy this issue is to solve, because it doesn't require you to, unstake your ETH and move to another provider, like basically shifting the ETH stake on the Beacon chain does. It doesn't require some like massive financial incentive to do this or anything like that. All it requires is awareness and education around the fact that, hey, this is how the Ethereum protocol has been constructed. You need to basically make sure that you're adhering to this, and then by doing that, you're able to protect yourself and protect your users that are staking with you from any kind of catastrophic risks here. So I'm very confident that in the next couple of months, we're actually going to see Geth get below that critical threshold. And I say a couple months because obviously Coinbase is working on it. They said they've got a target date of like, I think, what was it, like end of Feb to give a roadmap here. But yeah, I mean, they've already said that they're going to be reducing their reliance on Geth. Lido is already working on it slowly but surely, you can see here. And on top of that as well, there was a comment from a VP of growth at Kraken here saying that the team is currently exploring switching off of Geth at Kraken. So I think that if my assumption's correct here, I think Kraken is 100% Geth right now, which obviously isn't ideal. And I think they're also using a lot of Prism too. If you trust Radar.network here, I think that, yeah, they're using almost 100% Prism. So not only do they have to get off Geth, they also have to get off Prism, but the consensus layer stuff is way less of a concern right now. Obviously, as you can see here, the consensus layer is very, very healthy. No matter what data set you look at, it's quite healthy, especially compared to the execution layer. But yeah, if you look at Kraken here, they account for 3% of the network. If they were able to switch completely off Geth, that would be a huge boost as well. So, but still, I mean, Coinbase and Lido switching off is enough, but we should get as many to switch off as possible. And it's not about, and I should be clear here, it's not necessarily about switching off Geth, it's switching off the supermajority. If Nethermind had the supermajority, people would be saying the same thing. Geth is an amazing client, guys. It is super reliable. It's been around forever, like basically since day one. It has a lot of features that, that people like about it. People are used to it. Large staking enterprises and entities like it. There's nothing wrong with Geth. What's wrong is any one client having a supermajority. That's what we're targeting here. And it's just Geth in that position right now. So yeah, and actually, and a tweet thread related to that was something here from Marius, who is a developer on Geth, who works on Geth. He said, "Yeah, I would encourage everyone to change the debate around Ethereum's client diversity from talking about Geth to promoting the advantages of other clients. Nethermind has a great plugin system, and with Paprika, a purpose-built database for state." And then he goes on to list some of the other benefits, or some of the benefits of the other clients out there, the other execution layer clients out there. And I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But this is another thing, and it's another question that I basically addressed today in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, where people were asking, why has it taken so long to fix execution layer client diversity? Well, that mainly I would say it's because the other clients weren't up to scratch. Like Nethermind, Besu, and Aragon weren't considered to be up to scratch until maybe 6 to 12 months ago with Geth. And a lot of big institutions didn't want to switch over, and a lot of them probably didn't even realize the massive risk of running Geth. I know I talk about these risks a lot, and I thought I had this up today, but there was a really, really great tweet thread and blog post, which I'm going to bring up for you guys here from Labris, that was put out yesterday, that basically goes through exactly how you can lose all of your ETH staking with Geth staking with Geth as your execution layer client in a scenario where there is a bug. Now, the blog post itself I'm going to bring up here, and I just want to highlight one piece of this. So some people brought up, well, if it's an inactivity leak, doesn't everyone just get leaked or doesn't every validator just get leaked until it hits 16 ETH and then it gets ejected from the validator set? Yes, that's correct. That's how it works. And you could get leaked to 16 ETH very quickly because the quadratic inactivity leak kicks in if obviously a lot of the network is offline here at the same time. But one thing that may not seem intuitive to a lot of people, but it's not something you really think about, is that even if you're leaking out to 16 ETH and you've only lost 16 ETH, you haven't lost your full deposit, you haven't lost the 32 ETH, you've only lost 16 ETH, what happens is that you go into the exit queue. So now remember, Ethereum staking has an entry and exit queue. So you go into the exit queue even if you're force exited. Now, what do you think happens while you're in that exit queue? Well, what happens is that you continue to leak ETH. Right? It doesn't stop at 16 ETH while you're in the exit queue. You continue to leak out. So what happens when a large part of the network is leaking out and getting put into the exit queue? The exit queue goes up a lot. So Labris actually did the math here based on the current amount of ETH staked, and they say here that over 85% of validators will still be in the queue after 40 days when 90% of their stake has been wiped out. So only the first 8% of validators to exit will keep their loss below 50% of their stake. So even if we kind of look at the rules of the network and we say it only gets played out to 16 ETH, it can go to zero because of the fact that a large portion of the network is now considered to be offline. It is inactivity leaking, and that's how the ETH gets lost. So this blog post and tweet thread is a must read, like 100%. If anything you take out of my client diversity kind of coverage, it's this. Highly recommend going and reading it. I'll link it in the YouTube description below because it very cleanly explains what actually happens in the scenario that Geth has that the supermajority client has a bug. Because I've explained it before on the refuel, but this does a much better job of explaining it and breaking it down in terms of actual doing the math. Like I can't do the math live on the refuel, obviously, because it just doesn't work like that, but they actually did the math, so definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But I think that's it for client diversity. There are a couple of other staking related things I wanted to talk about. So Jasper put out a great tweet thread today breaking down this chart that shows where Ethereum nodes are hosted and where blocks are being proposed from those validators. So you can see here that Jasper says, okay, this chart has bothered me deeply. At first glance, it makes you think that nearly 2/3 of Ethereum is run by AWS. This is false. Let me break down what this chart actually shows. And hint, Ethereum is incredibly decentralized. So the chart it's a chart of blocks produced over the last 48 hours by hosted services, and it does not consider home stakers. It only looks at cloud providers like Amazon and Allnodes. In fact, Jasper continues, from this data, we can actually figure out how many blocks are produced by home stakers. In 48 hours, there are roughly 11,500 blocks, one block every 15 seconds. I think he corrected himself. It's one block every 12 seconds, obviously because blocks in Ethereum are 12 seconds. But it's just rough math here. But if we look at the above chart and add it all up, we see just about 6,000 blocks. That leaves 5,500 blocks produced by non-cloud services, or at least services that aren't tracked as cloud services here. So, I mean, go read this tweet thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But it's just a great kind of, I guess, like nuance to the fact that people try to say that all full nodes are run in AWS, all full nodes, all validators are running AWS or run on cloud providers, so Ethereum isn't decentralized. That's total bullshit. And at the same time, I've also described in the past about how the most important thing isn't necessarily where nodes are run. Like, if we're talking about the most important thing, like the with, in italics, the most important thing is the fact that you can run a full node anywhere, basically. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi or you can run it in a data center. That is the whole point, guys. It doesn't matter if people are choosing to run it in data centers, instead of running it at home. The whole point is that you have a choice, right? Whereas most other networks, you don't have that choice on them to do that, right? So that's why we consider Ethereum to be incredibly decentralized. Now, there was also a related picture here from Tim Robinson where he said, wow, look at all these nodes on AWS. Who knew it was so decentralized? And he's obviously being sarcastic. And he's got a photo collage here from stakefromhome.com, which Superfuse has put together, basically showing all of the little home staking boxes that people have shared. Now, keep in mind, this is only the people that have actually shared this publicly. I actually see mine on there. So there are definitely a lot more that haven't been shared publicly. But this is the true Ethereum here, guys. This is Ethereum. When you want to say to people, okay, what is Ethereum? To me, this is Ethereum. People staking from home on small, low-powered hardware and contributing meaningfully to the decentralization and resiliency of the Ethereum network. They are producing blocks, they are testing to blocks, and they are, of course, running full nodes alongside that to verify all of that, and possibly using their full nodes as their own RPC as well, which is, again, one of the most cypherpunk things about Ethereum. So just wanted to share that there, because I thought it was a great little image that that Tim Robinson put together. So kudos to him for doing that. And you can check out that image for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Smoothly is now alive. So they're officially onboarding solo stakers. Now, of course, just a reminder here for those of you who don't know what Smoothly is, it's basically a rocket pool style smoothing pool for solo stakers on Ethereum. Now, as you guys know, solo staking on Ethereum, you don't have a native smoothing pool. It is something that you basically just do on your own. You collect all the rewards for yourself. But if you want to be part of a smoothing pool, you now can with Smoothly. Now, of course, I should mention that Dapnode has their own version of this called Smooth as well, that Dapnode people running Dapnode can opt into, but Smoothly is another option out there for people here. So you can go to their website and check out exactly what it is and how to get involved with it. I do want to note here and shout out that the rewards have also been juiced by the ETH that Smoothly received during the Gitcoin grants round 19. And also there was a bunch of proceeds that went from a POAP that Honey Albu made that are going to the pool. And the coolest thing about this pool is that anyone can contribute funds to it. So, for example, let's just say Smoothly goes and signs up as a recipient to OP public grants funding, right? Also, so it's the retroactive public goods funding on Optimism, and then they get a grant paid out in OP. It can go straight into the pool here, and then solo stakers can tap into that and get a nice, bonus to the reward that they're already getting. Because I know that there's a lot of comments these days around people as solo stakers feeling, not loved enough, because people were promised all these airdrops to solo stakers. They were promised extra juicy rewards, when in reality that hasn't really materialized. And I think it will materialize over time. I'm really hoping services like Eigenlayer, for example, do a special airdrop to solo stakers. Even though solo stakers are quite hard to identify, I mean, I think that you can identify them to some extent. You probably won't get everyone, but you can identify them to some extent. It's obviously going to be hard to get 100% coverage. But I really hope, something like Eigenlayer does it. I hope that other services like maybe Etherify and Swell, the ones that haven't done tokens yet, do airdrops and stuff like that. But even possibly a better way for them to do it, if they wanted to, or an additional way for them to do it, is just to airdrop to the Smoothly pool. That would be really cool as well. Just juicing this pool with as many rewards as possible in order to get people to opt into it, and obviously to get more solo stakers online on the network here. Now, of course, you can also, as a solo staker, go there and opt into the pool. So your rewards basically go into the pool like it does within Rocket Pool if you opt in, and then it all gets smoothed out to everyone. Now, there's been a lot of debate about this, I think, over the years, especially when it comes to like MEV lottery blocks. Because when you think about it, and I think I've done the math on the refuel before about this, a lot of solo validators out there, they look at the blocks that they propose and they're hoping to get that really big block, right? You know, from time to time, you'll see ginormous blocks, like hundreds of ETH worth of block rewards going to something like Lido or Coinbase, because obviously they have a lot of validators, and then that ETH gets spread out, basically. I mean, they have inbuilt smoothing pools, so to speak. It gets basically spread out with all of all of the people holding ST ETH, for example. Now, as a solo validator, your chance, even if you've got like hundreds of validators, your chances of actually landing that block are incredibly slim. Like, I mean, I did the math back in the day on this, I think a while ago now, but they're incredibly slim, because not only do you have to propose a block, you have to propose the right block, and one of those big lottery blocks only comes around every so often. So if you were to do the actual math on it over long periods of time, let's say you did the math on it over a year, I would probably go longer than a year, but a year I think is a good starting point. And you say, okay, well, if I opt into a smoothing pool as a solo staker, and a lot of other people opt in as well, versus doing it on my own, would I be better off in the smoothing pool? There is some point where it becomes you're better off being in the smoothing pool, as long as there's enough other validators in there. Because let's just say there's tens of thousands of validators in that smoothing pool, then the calculus becomes very different, because the chances of that pool getting one of those lottery blocks goes up significantly, and then that obviously gets shared with a lot of people on, as part of that pool there. So I would think that it would net out to be better, you being better off doing that. Now, of course, that removes the feeling of winning that lottery block. Like, obviously, half the fun of playing the lottery is that feeling of, am I going to win? Am I not going to win? And I haven't ever played the lottery. I'm not someone who actually gambles, but I think that even for most people, or for a lot of people, most of the feeling is of playing the lottery is that kind of feeling of excitement that, oh, what if I actually win this time, right? So the same is true for when you propose blocks and thinking, you see a notification on your phone, or you see you proposed a block, and you're like, oh, did I propose a lottery block, for example? I have that feeling too with my validators, where I refresh and I see a little green bar. So I monitor my validators on the Beacon Chain website, and I refresh and I see a little green bar in my income thing, and a little green part of the bar, and the green is the execution layer income. And to see how much you actually earned, you have to hover over it. You can kind of get a rough estimate from the size of the bar, and then you can look on the left for a chart for the numbers, but obviously I look at the color first, and then I look at the numbers. So for that split second, I've got that feeling of, oh, wow, did I hit a massive lottery block, right? So that feeling is obviously not going to be present if you're part of a smoothing pool. But at the same time, when you do get that lottery block as a smoothing pool, you get to celebrate that as a community, especially within Rocket Pool. I know they celebrate these things. They have a bot in their Discord channel that tracks these things. But then, as I said, you're probably better off being in a pool than doing it on your own, because the chances of you getting one of those blocks on your own is incredibly slim. Even if you're running, tens, hundreds of validators, it's still very, very slim for the reasons I've outlined before. But anyway, you can go check out Smoothly for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. Alright, so I've been talking a lot about the Ethereum gas limit over the last couple of weeks, and how there's going to be more research done into the potential of increasing the gas limit and what that means for the network. Now, Tony here has a great research post on the research forum today that he put together called On Block Sizes, Gas Limits, and Scalability. Now, this is a really good primer on what all these things actually are, especially when it comes to the gas limit. So if you are still confused about what this is, definitely go check out this post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But this is just, I think, the initial post on giving the context around, what it is, why do we want to increase it, what does the network look like today, and then modeling out what it would look like if we increase it to a certain amount, if we increase it by 50%, 100%, so on and so forth. So just wanted to highlight this because it's a recommended read. I read it just before, and it's really great. I mean, I obviously already have context around this, but I read it and I was just like, okay, this is a really great primer for anyone who wants to learn all about these things in a relatively short amount of time, because it's not a long post. So definitely go check that out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, last up here, something not related to ETH core development and staking. I think the whole episode today was almost, there was the ETF stuff at the start. But this is an update from Scroll. So Scroll has unveiled their multi-prover implementation that you can read about in this blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But this is something that they've been working on for quite a while. And actually, I remember talking to them about this quite a while ago, and how they wanted to build this thing because basically the whole goal of this is to build redundancy into the proving mechanism. So you can think of it I mean, they use the kind of analogy here of like client diversity for provers, basically. So instead of just having kind of one prover, you have multiple provers so that there's redundancy built in, and so that in case of any bugs and things like that, it doesn't lead to like the worst case scenario for the system here. So, as I said, there's a tweet thread and a blog post you can read to get more details about this and how this all works together. But this is really cool. And I think that this is actually going to be the future of proving for all ZK systems, because at the end of the day, you can't just rely on one system. You have to have multiple systems for redundancy. And we know this because layer 1 Ethereum, obviously, it all starts from layer 1 Ethereum, where we have client diversity, we have redundancy built in there. And with the layer 2s, they're also doing client diversity at the validator, and I think they're going to do sequencer diversity as well. But when it comes to ZK stuff, you definitely need prover diversity here, and you definitely need multi-proof systems in order to make sure that in the event of the worst case scenario, the system is protected from that. Because in a trustless, decentralized system, that it should be self-healing, or it should be something where you can heal without there, in case of like the worst case scenario, without there being major damage to the ecosystem. So yeah, anyway, big congrats to Scroll for putting this kind of blog post out there finally. I know they've been working hard on this for quite a while now, and you can go check that out for yourself. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.